Okay, hi everybody. So welcome to the third session of Beth Alita's online learning series, The Earth is the Lord, exploring the relationship between God, the world, and us. In particular, the way in which actually that relationship between us and between us and God, or between us and the world, are mediated by always the third. To what it means to have a relationship with God, we cannot forget the Creator made a creation, and to have a relationship with the earth, creation, it brings us beyond ourselves to think about the entire community of creatures here, and thus brings our attention to the Creator. So if you want to look at those kind of more theological themes and the way that those redound into halakha, to Jewish law, those are the first two sessions, and you're welcome to go check those out on the YouTube page. But tonight's topic is going to be a little bit more topical. We're going to be looking at the history and the significance, the meaning of the holiday of Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is a very interesting holiday because it had its origins in a pretty obscure particular context, and then it got intentionally appropriated and adapted to suit different ends, namely the ends of the Kabbalists of 16th century Tzfat. But part of the argument of this class will be that the Safidian Kabbalists were not just totally like, it wasn't like cultural appropriate. It wasn't like imposing their imperial values on it, but rather that what they were doing was the Kabbalists were finding something already subtle and implied in the material surrounding Tu B'Shvat and actually trying to unpack it, trying to ritualize and trying to capture the magical moment by presenting it in a new kind of way for a new generation. So let's just to make sure we all have our bearings. So Tu B'Shvat is a fun way to abbreviate a date. The Hebrew numbers are letters, so all of the numbers in Hebrew can be made into combinations of letters. Tu, tes vav, or tet vav, translates to 15. You might ask, why not 10 and 5? And the answer is because Yud, Hey, which is 10 and 5, spell out a short name of God. So, for at risk of being blithe about that, although you do see that show up as 15 every once in a while. But most of the times you see 15 written out, it's 9 and 6. Tes and Vav, which spell out 2. So Tu B'Shvat means the Ides of Shvat. It's the 15th of Shvat. And we will be exploring what the significance of it is. But if I were to ask you brilliant people, hey, just give me the quick blurb, what's Tu B'Shvat, you would say?
Birthday of the trees.
Birthday of the trees. That is a cute way of putting it.
New Year.
Yeah.
New Year. New Year
New
of the
Year.
trees, and it's when
Fiscal year of
bloom.
the trees. We'll be talking about the tax season. So for all of you CPAs in the audience, this will be the first half of this class will be very exciting for you. So yeah, fiscal year of the trees, birth year of the tree. I think I mentioned this previous class, but I saw this news item that like all of the horses in one hemisphere and all of the horses in another hemisphere, but they all have the same birthday. Not literally, but rather it would be absurd to expect someone who keeps horses, unless like you have like your old nag, but like, somebody who like professionally raises horses, you don't know all of their birthdays, so you need to like have a sense of how old they are. So all of the horses in the northern hemisphere versus the southern hemisphere, they all have the same birthday. It is almost exactly like what we're going to see about the trees. So it is called, though, not the birthday, although that's like a cute way of putting it, but the new year of the trees. It's Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot. It's the new year of the trees. Rosh Hashanah, like Rosh Hashanah. And indeed, where we see the precedent for this is in Maseches Rosh Hashanah. It's in the Mishnaic tractate about the new year, which, although funny enough, most of what that Mishnaic tractate deals with is not actually the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. It's mostly other stuff, but let's get cracking. Let's jump into the text. All right, can everyone see that? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so they ruined my fonts. Whatever. On Tu B'Shvat, and the subtitle, which I'm very proud of, from its roots to its fruits. I was thinking of actually a very apt adage or kind of short philosophical point made by the American pragmatist and psychologist William James, who in his book Varieties of Religious Experience was kind of fighting against like what he called a geneticist approach, namely, to understand something, you always need to look at its origin, to reduce it to what it was originally. And I think we see a lot of times people do that with historical phenomena. It's like, oh, if you really want to understand Judaism, you have to look just at the Torah. But if we all know, as living, breathing, active Jews, that that is not at all the way Judaism looks like or behaves from the inside. From the inside, Judaism is a tradition that is passed down from one generation to another. It is something that is organic. It flowers and grows. So James said, and this is very much the approach I wanted to take, not only with Judaism in general, but looking specifically at this phenomenon, that we should look not at the roots, but rather to the fruits. We don't look at just what its origins are, something's origins, but rather we also look at what it produces, of what it develops into, of what it flowers into. So we're going to see the relationship between the origins of Tu Bishvat as this fiscal New Year holiday and an accounting of the trees. And we'll see how the Kabbalists found planted within it seeds, which implied themes that they wanted to explore, which took them further and further until they developed something that looks nothing like what's described, but something in a way that we can see as the fullest working out of what was already there. So let's start looking at it. Now, as always, I'm sure we won't get to every text, but we'll do our darndest, and I'll make sure we won't be here for 2 hours. Please not her. Okay. So the first Mishnah, the very first Mishnah of Maseches Rosh Hashanah, of the tractate dealing with Rosh Hashanah, a lot of it has to do with Rosh Chodesh and the way that the new month is reported. But here we're on point, we're on topic. But we're going to hear something that maybe is a little bit surprising because maybe not everybody knows this. But Arba'a Rosh Hashanim Haim. There are 4 Rosh Hashanahs. What? That's wild. What are you talking about? Be'echad b'Nisan. When we say Rosh Hashanah, what do we mean? What date are we referring to? This is a gimme. Come on, people. When you say Rosh Hashanah, it's what date?
It's Tishrei, the first.
Good, first of Tishrei. Good. I'm not trying to trick you. Good, first of Tishrei. It's like, no, it's the 30th of Elul. I tricked you all. The first day of Rosh Hashanah is the last day. No, I'm not doing that to you. First of Tishrei, it's the new year. It's the January 1st of the rabbinic year. But, as we actually just talked about in this past week's Parsha, the biblical new year doesn't start in Tishrei. The biblical new year starts with the head of the months. Chapter 12, verse 1. Roshei Chodeshim Lachem. Which is Roshei Chodeshechem Lachem. The first of the months for you. And what's the month of liberation? What's the boom, the kickoff for the Jewish year in the Bible is what month?
Nisan. We just
Nisan.
read it last week.
Yes, precisely. So, Bechad ben Nisan, Rosh Hashanah l'Malachim, Va'ala Regalim. So, the first of Nisan is the head of the year, the new year, for kings, and by that what they mean is Jewish kings, i.e., when you mark a calendar, you say, it was this day in this month in the reign of this king, in the year of the reign of this king. That's how they would keep dates in the ancient world. So how do we know when the year starts? What's the first year versus the second year? Well, if a king were crowned on the 30th of Adar, or the 29th of Adar, depending if it's a short or long month, and I'm not a calendar nerd, I'm sorry, on the last day of Adar, then the first day of the second year of his reign would be tomorrow. Right? Once Nisan 1st is passed, that's the new year. So, as long as the king is crowned prior to Nisan 1st, whatever happens after Nisan 1st is the second year of their reign. Does that make sense? It is a formal marker. It is not an apt descriptor. Okay? And to holidays, meaning the beginning of the holiday season, because you are obligated to bring sacrifices on certain holidays, and if you don't bring them on time, then there's a certain makeup period in which you can bring, namely with the first fruits, you have from this period to the next period until Shavuot. But how do we know when that period begins and when it ends? The holiday season, the holiday year starts in Nisan 1st, right? So the first holiday of the year is Passover. Okay? that all make sense? Great, we're just getting our bearings here. Be'echad be'elul, Rosh Hashanah l'maiser behema. The first of Elul, that one is, no one talks about Rosh Hashanah of Echad be'elul. No one talks about this one. The first day of the month of Elul is the Rosh Hashanah for the animal tithe. Now, I have some friends, Lauren, close your ears. I have some friends who love meat, eating it, I mean, and they want to try to turn this into like Tu Bishvat, but for burgers. Basically, they want to like turn this into like a real Fresser's Yontif. It has yet to happen, but we'll see if anyone really picks up on it. But point is, this is a holiday for the tithe of the animals. So, just like you have to tithe your crops, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you also have to tithe your animals. You have to give 1/10 of them born to God. Okay, but how do you know what the 10th is marking? When does the time start? When does the time end? Any animal born after Elul 1st. Right? That's when the year starts. And until the next Elul comes, that time period is when you are marking how many animals have been born and how many you need to devote to God. Okay? Great. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Omrim be'echad b'tishrei. They say, no. The animal Rosh Hashanah should be the 1st of Tishrei. That one is going to be very busy. So we're going to see that doesn't win out. Be'echad b'tishrei, everyone says, Rosh Hashanah l'shanim, v'la shmitin, v'la yovelot, la netiyah, v'la yirakot. So the 1st of Tishrei is the Rosh Hashanah for the years. And by that what they mean is the way that we mark the calendar nowadays, because that's the rabbinic New Year. But also, as the Gemara will explain, which we're not going to get into, it's also the way that they mark the years according to the Gentile kings, right? So they'll say, so the king of Rome or whatever, first day of the first month of the second year, third year, whatever, of his reign, marked by Tishrei. And what's the importance of this? Why is it so important to make sure you have a regular date system? This is for lawyers. Why? Who cares? I mean, okay, we say like, okay, yeah.
Or
Without it would be
documents.
disorder. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, okay, who said documents?
We did.
Oh yeah, chiming in from the law. Good, it's about documents. That's exactly right. You need to make sure you have a regulated system of dates to make sure that, let's say someone is borrowing money against you, right? Or borrowing money from you, rather, that you have scheduled for them to pay you back by a certain date. You all need to know what date you're talking about, right? You need to make sure, or when we're talking about divorce documents, that's something that can cause a lot of complications in terms of families, right? So you need to make sure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to what it means to record dates. So when it comes to things that you're gesturing towards religious dates or secular dates, you have a marker of when the second year or the new year begins vis-a-vis the king. But also, Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei, our Rosh Hashanah, has its own agricultural significance, interestingly. Because when it comes to tithing the plants and vegetables, right? In terms of marking, what did my bumper crop produce this year? What's my 10th I need to give away? Or what is my what's the truma offering I need to offer to the priests? Right, all of the priestly gifts, the tithes to the temple, the tithes to the poor. All of your agricultural tithing is done marked by Tishrei 1st. That's the new year for all of your non-tree vegetable matter. It's interesting that Tu Bishvat, why isn't Rosh Hashanah the Arbor day of the Jews? Well, it's a busy holiday because we're in shul all day. Fine, maybe it's just like Tu Bishvat's an open day. You can do with it what you will. But it's interesting. I just mean to contrast that Rosh Hashanah of Tishrei also has an agronomical significance. So there's something special about trees that seem to have drawn mystical, ritualistic, spiritual attention to really focus on this day, to focus on what it means to connect between us, nature, and the way that God flows between those two things. Tishrei 1st is also the marker for Shemitah and Yovel too. So the 7-year cycle or the 50-year cycle of the Shemitah, which we're going to be talking about in the next few months, and Yovel, the hyper Shemitah, the Shemitah times Shemitah of 7 times 7 plus 1, right? The 50th year, in which it's like Shemitah squared. Actually literally Shemitah squared. It's 7 times 7. That also gets marked. The Shemitah year is declared Tishrei first, and we even mark it nowadays, even in the Chutz La'aretz, when we say the Musaf Amida, the additional Amida for Rosh Chodesh. Every month between Tishrei and Nisan, there's a special 2-word phrase that we tack in if it's a Shemitah year, but only until Nisan. Okay, but here we get to the star of the show. Be'echad Bishvat, Rosh Hashanah La'ilan. So the first of Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah 4 trees. Pause. Wait, first of Shvat? What are we talking about? Weren't we just saying it's to Bishvat? That's the 15th. Kedivrei Beit Shammai. Oh, those rapscallions Beit Shammai. They're always throwing a wrench in the works. Let me tell you, if colleges had Shammai House, they would be much less interested in including people and welcoming them in. They'd be like, all right, I'm going to shove you out with my cubit rod, because that's what Shammai likes to do. It's very he's got the standards, So Divrei Beit Shammai, the often losing side, is going to say first of Shvat, and Beit Hillel, right? The school of Hillel says Chamisha Asarbo, the 15th. Okay, so what's the immediate question that comes to mind? Yeah, I saw gesturing. Why this disagreement? What's the difference between the first of Shvat and the 15th, such that there was actually a dispute about what the appropriate date for the holiday is? Now, it's worth noting what is interesting, what's unique about Tu B'Shvat in this Mishnah.
Is that it's on the 15th instead of the 1st?
Yeah, that's right. It's the only one that ends up having a non-first of the month, non-Rosh Chodesh date associated with it. Every other Rosh Hashanah is also a Rosh Chodesh, except for Tu B'Shvat. So maybe Beit Shammai are just trying to keep it all consistent. They're like, listen, the way it should work, it should all be, the first of the month, first of the month, first of the month. Who knows? Yeah, Renee.
Does it have something to do with the moon? Because the 15th, there are other holidays, like in the middle of the month.
Yeah, Passover, Sukkot, sure.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It's just an idea. It perhaps has something to do with the moon.
Well, again, we're going to get into the kind of material disagreement between them in terms of why they argued for one over the other. But I think what you are gesturing to or implying, Renee, is that to put the holiday of Tu B'Shvat on the 15th of the month makes it feel more like a Yontif. Right? It makes it seem more like Pesach or Sukkot. It makes it seem like a holiday rather than just one of these mere, no offense to accountants, one of these mere fiscal markers, right? But let's just make sure, just to review, all of these first of the months, which are also first of the years, are all ways to make sure that we have a regulated, common, right, agreed upon system of how to count what it is that we have. Whether it is dealing with business relations to make sure we can all agree on dates, or it is to account for what it is that God has blessed us with, our flocks, our harvest, right? Our trees, our orchards. All of it is. I think to do an accounting of it, but accounting is actually a beautiful word. A cheshbon, right? To really go through and have a good sense of what it is that we have been blessed with, and for that to lead us to what we owe. Right, what gratitude demands of us. See a quick comment in the chat. Okay, great. So let's just make sure that before we get to the dispute between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, that we have a comment from Barton Nora that just makes sure the comment, you can just look at it yourself. We don't have to go into it inside. But just to ground the fact that Tu B'Shvat's halachic origins, but it's the case for almost all of these except for the one for Nisan, have to do with making sure that we're able to observe the mitzvah of the meiser, of tithing. Now, the English word tithe and the Hebrew word meiser, should tell you what percentage it is we're talking about, right? So, what is the tithe, just literally? Idiomatically, it means a gift, but a tithe, right? Exactly. It's from the Hebrew. It's from the word 10, right? It's a decimal. It is a decimal, right? It is a tenth. It's in the tenths place. So you're giving a tenth of your flocks. You're giving a tenth of your crops. You're giving a tenth of your fruits to God. But so there's a number of different gifts. There's a truma, which is not defined, but it's less than a tenth. But you give first to the Kohanim, then you give a tenth to the temple. That's Meiser Rishon. To the Levites and the like. Then alternating between the first, second, and fourth and fifth years, you give a tithe to the Meiser Sheni, a second tithe, which you bring to Jerusalem and you're allowed to eat. So you are actually allowed to benefit from it. That's surprising, maybe you'd say. That the third and the sixth years are the tithes for the poor. That makes sense, right, in terms of it being a gift for the poor to give back to the community. Why is it that a priest, let's say, what is expected for you to give ends up just going back to yourself? I mean, let's answer. So this is what's called Meiser Sheni. It is a tenth of your produce, a tenth of what you produce, that you need to bring to Jerusalem, and that's the place where you can consume it. Now you're allowed to exchange it for money and then buy stuff in Jerusalem. Maybe it's just to support the Jerusalemite economy. Who knows? It's like it's what's it called? Not surplus. It's a infusion. I forget what that's called. Whatever it's called when you save the banks. Whatever. The point is that there's artificial demand in Jerusalem's economy. Great, you're saving Jerusalem. But why would you think something that is putatively a gift is actually something that you're allowed to enjoy? Stimulus. Thank you. It's a stimulus. My brain is done. Mm-hmm. So, it's just the premise of this is all of the Meisers and the Trumas, all of the priestly gifts, all of these taxes, right? This is an old version of what it means to pay tax, right? It is a recognition, much like tax, that what you have is not entirely yours, right? It is something that you owe to infrastructure. It's something that you owe to the support of community. It's something you owe to your municipality. It's something you owe to the gift, to the generosity of God, in a religious context. So Meiser, Truma, are early, versions of what it means to have a tax system. And they support a welfare state in some ways too. We have the poor gifts, the corn is your field that you don't harvest, things like that. So the Meiser logic is that what you have is not entirely yours, which we talked about the last couple of weeks. And that's put into practice by the fact that it is not yours, because that tenth belongs to the priest, to the Levite. That tenth belongs to the poor person. But for Meiser Sheni, interestingly, that tenth belongs to you. It's just that it's conditioned on your enjoyment of it. I think part of what's going on, which I think, again, one of the things that's going to get unpacked by the Kabbalists later, is that Meiser is not just about the sheer obligation of what it is you need to give to others, but it's also forcing you to stop and to appreciate what it is that you have. Part of it is giving to others to support the priests because they're not allowed to have jobs, to support the Levites because that's how they make their salary, to support the poor because that is your obligation as a member of the community, to support the Jerusalem economy, maybe the stimulus. But also part of it is to make sure that you maintain a connection to what it is you've been blessed with, so that your enjoyment of it, structured as a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, but your enjoyment of it is something that brings you back into connection and gratitude for what it is that you have. All right, so that's part of what it means to also have Tu Bishvat be marking this time in which you are giving and you are taking account of what it is that you have vis-a-vis the trees. Versus what would you? So Sue's asking, does it only apply to fruit-bearing trees? Yes, because if it's not a fruit-bearing tree, what would you tithe?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, no, but that's a good point. Like
The
anything,
pine tree, how do you tithe a pine tree?
right? Well, so maybe it is maybe a fruit-bearing tree in the sense of if you are financially benefiting from its sap or something I guess not a pine tree, but like a maple tree or something like that, right? And you're making maple syrup out of it. But that's a fruit, right? That's the fruits of your labor. Okay. So what's going on with this machlekes, with this disagreement between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? They can't stop arguing with each other. They simply cannot. So they say, Beis Shammai says the first of the month, Beit Hillel says the 15th of the month. What's the reason? A great question. Rabbi Elazar Amar Rabbi Oshaya. So Rabbi Elazar quotes Rabbi Oshaya. He says, Hu'il v'yatsu rov gishmei shana, v'adayin rov tkufa mibachutz. Why? Now this is trying to explain the first of the month. Saying because by then, say Beit Shammai, most of the rain of the year has already come, and yet most of the season has yet to occur. Mai Kaimer, what does that mean? That seems odd. Hachi Kamar, this is what it means. Afal pi sherov tkufa mibachutz, ho'il v'yatzu rov gishmei hashana. It says, even though most of the season has yet to occur, most of the rain has already fallen. Now, just quick background, and let's see for a little bit of you agriculture, you land of Israel agriculture heads. So, first of all, it's just really neat is that the seasons are named after the central months. So the season of winter is actually named after the month of Tevet, not Shvat, but Tevet. But Tevet was just last month. So obviously there's a lot of the season yet to occur. Right? And yet, how many rains fall, generally speaking, in Israel? I don't mean instances of rain. I mean how many rain seasons are there? Right? So important to know, right? It's not like they have snow. There are two seasons basically in Israel. There's the dry season, summer, and there's the wet season, the rain season in winter. But the wet season in winter is divided into discrete periods of rain. There's a certain number of kinds of rain that occur. How many kinds of rains are there in Israel?
I'm just thinking of having lived there. There's the rain that comes around Sukkot, and that's usually the very first rain.
Good, that's what we're praying for. Shmini Atzeret, good.
Exactly. And then you get your heavy rain around Hanukkah and after. By Pesach, it's already almost gone.
Yes, that's the beginning of the dry season. Great. So there are two, just like Lauren said, there are two rain periods within the rain season. The first is called, let's go to the explanatory comment. The first is called Yoreh, which is from the same linguistic root as the word to shoot an arrow, lahorot. And it is a piercing rain. It is the rain that softens up the ground. It penetrates the earth. The language is kind of masculinist, right? Like it is a hard driving rain. It's a penetrating rain. It gets the ground ready to germinate. Then there's a second rain, which is called reviyah, which means fructification, which literally means to fruitify. And that's the rain where the earth is in its state to start germinating new life vis-a-vis what's being planted. Okay? So there's two kinds of rain, masculine, a feminine rain, a father rain, and a mother rain, a first rain and a second rain, a rain that starts the process and a rain that continues it and works it out and develops it. Okay? So there's two kinds of rain. So let's go to the Rashi. Rashi says, since most of the year's rain has fallen, he says, since most of the days of rain have already passed, i.e. Yoreh, this is the time of the Reviyah, the second rain, in which the sap is starting to flow within the trees, and the fruits will begin to take their shape from then on. Now, I'm always struck by this when I review this around this time of year. You'd think that the Jewish Arbor Day would be in what time of year? Like when's the Goyish Arbor Day?
Like harvest season, like when all the fruit's ready to pick, so you can share it and divide it up.
Wait, when is Arbor Day? We might have a different. Wait, when is Arbor Day?
We don't have Arbor Day in Canada, so I don't know.
Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, I didn't mean to impose my Amerocentric views on you. Okay, when's Earth Day? When's Earth Day? Yeah, wait, Mom. Yeah.
April, but like, are you thinking of like Thanksgiving?
No, I'm not thinking of Thanksgiving. I'm thinking of the spring. My Wait, when's Arbor Day in America? Apparently,
Maybe June. I can Google it.
yeah, sure. The point is, it's in the spring. Okay, Arbor Day's in the spring. Why? Because it's when the trees are flowering. It's the tree holiday. But what's happening with the trees in Jewish tree holiday? Is it apparent or is it subtle?
It's subtle. They're just starting to bloom.
Okay. This is part of why I think
that's when you see the almond trees, like Hashkelia Parachat, it's mamish real. Like all of a sudden you see the first blooms on the almond trees.
Yeah, so from then on, so what the marker they're trying to figure out, according to Rashi's interpretation, is Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel are in a way doing an empirical investigation. But they're not trying to find something that's already apparent. They're trying to figure out when's the beginning of a subtle, hidden process happening within the tree. And the process they're trying to figure out is when are the conditions for new life being initiated. It's not when it's already blossoming and exploding in front of you, but rather they're trying to figure out when is the blood of the tree, right, the sap of this tree, the sraf, they call it, starting to flow, such that after this period, just like what Lauren said, now is when the fruit will start forming. Right? The word is chontin or chanat, which means to take shape, to solidify, to coalesce. Right, first the blossoms, and then something emerges from there and starts to become something of its own self. We're looking for not when that fruit has already happened, but the conditions that it needs to occur. So my point in this, and I find this so striking, which is why I think even though the Tu B'Shvat looks so different in the Kabbalistic period than it did in the Mishnaic period, the Kabbalists, I think, aptly found something that is esoteric in the holiday, because Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are trying to figure out something hidden, something that is concealed and subtle within the tree, something that is not an apparent process, but something that requires a kind of intimate understanding. Yeah, Susie.
I mean, spiritually, I get what they're trying to do. It's interesting, but if it was a tithing holiday, like, is this the date that you're supposed to divide everything up?
This is the date that begins. Yeah, thank you. I knew it. April. Yes, Arbor Day is in April. It's in the spring when the trees are flowering. It is the period. In a sense, it's saying before this period there will be no fruit. This is the beginning of when fruiting is happening.
Well, how do you do the calculations of the 10% if there's no fruit yet?
Because you do it at the end of the year.
Oh, okay. I'm confused.
Yeah. Okay. It's like taxes. It's a fiscal holiday. You report your taxes in July 1st, July 15th, something like that.
But from the year before.
Right. From January 1st to December 31st, that's your reported income. Similarly, here from from the 15th of Shvat through the 14th of next year's Shvat, that is all of the fruit that happens then. That's what the year's produce is for fruit. And you give a tenth. Well, first you give a gift to the priest, then you give a tenth to the Levite, then you give the second tenth either to the poor or you bring it with yourself to Jerusalem. Okay, that makes sense. Great.
Got it.
Awesome. Okay. So one aspect I want to say is that Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai are trying to figure out something hidden, something subtle, something esoteric, trying to figure out when the beginning of a process is occurring, when the sap is starting to flow in the tree, when the tree is starting to wake back up. That's what Tu B'Shvat is. It's not when it's already occurred, but rather what the tree needs to do so that new life in the tree can occur. Rashi also says, interpreting most of the winter, most of the season, right, season of Tevet has already occurred. Adayin rovat kufa lavo. Most of the season has yet to come. Right, it's the season of Tevet. Tevet just happened. So Tu B'Shvat is not about what's occurred yet. Tu B'Shvat is about potential. It's about what is brimming, what is about to start happening. It is a again, talking about this, the rain that flushes through the earth, and the Yoreh and the Revia. It is a pregnant moment full of potential and possibility. It is germinating, gestating new life. Okay. And I want to bring back this text that we concluded our learning last week about the halachic nature of our relationship to the environment. And we saw this beautiful moral teaching from Rabbi Eliezer Melamed from Shlita from Israel in his book Pninei Halacha. And he compared the human being to the fruit tree. Why? Because just like a fruit tree takes time to develop its gifts, right, what it has to give to others, so a human being too is a creature of duration. It's a creature of development. We become something over time, and we produce and we discover what, we grow into our purpose and what we have to give. So the connection, this pasuk we focused on last week, Ki Adam Eitz Hasadeh, the human being is like a tree of the field. There's a correlation, there's a mapping. There's an agreement of sorts, a hat'amah in Hebrew, between human beings and trees, in that we identify is the wrong word, because we recognize in each other, in both trees and in human beings, that there is a duration of time, a development that's required for us to be able to, and for trees to be able to produce. Tu Bishvat is a holiday of duration. It is marking the beginning of a process that is about to start occurring as the sap starts flowing in the tree. It's about potential. It's about potential, and it's about gratitude. It's about recognition. So the two sides of Tu Bishvat I'm trying to highlight. One is it's a tithe-oriented holiday, right? Ancient taxes. So you recognize what our obligations are and what gratitude looks like, both in terms of what it means to give to others what they need, and also to stop and be forced to appreciate what you've been given when you take the second tithe to Jerusalem. So what we have already, that's Tu Bishvat, and what we need to be grateful for. And on the other side is the potential of what's yet to come. Right? These are the thematic elements in Tu Bishvat that I think are there already in a way. And as the Kabbalists in the 16th century start trying to figure out how to not just theoretically recognize what it is for us to acknowledge God's relationship with creation, but actually ritualize it, to form some kind, to craft some kind of technology of sorts to help us come into connection with something powerful, to give us a vessel in which we can contain this intuition of ours and this experience. That's what ends up becoming the case for Tu Bishvat. I'm arguing that it is not some kind of, like, they just take a thing and they just, like, they turn it to their own devices, but rather the Kabbalists recognized in Tu Bishvat already an attention to the subtle, an attention to something hidden that's starting to flow, an attention to the imperative for us to be grateful and appreciate what it is that we've been given. And last but not least, what it means to honor and recognize this powerful connection, this powerful correlation between human beings and trees. Okay, so before we move to the, it's like an A-B section. Before we move to the Kabbalistic, explicitly Kabbalistic part, is any wrap-up questions or clarifying questions or comments that you want to add about Tu Bishvat that we haven't had a chance to recognize? Or just thoughts about Tu Bishvat before we kind of take it into a specific historical direction? Okay, great. Keep on letting your brains bubble. Curious to hear what you have to say as we move forward. So, just some quick bibliographical details. The pre-Eitz Hadar is the sole text that is about Tu Bishvat. It is an anonymous text composed by a student of the Arizal, right, Isaac Luria, who is who led a circle of Kabbalists in the late 16th century. He was only there for 4 years. if I remember correctly. And he only was a leader of a circle for 2. But he changed Jewish thought forever. It's an incredible 4 years he had. So a student of his, not inventing this, but rather recording what it is that the Arizal and Chaim Vital, his kind of central disciple, and the other circle of Kabbalists around them developed to unpack the mystical significance of Tu B'Shvat. And we were saying before, like if you dig into, you can see all of these potential themes that the Kabbalists are attending to and are sensitive to and are unpacking. That's true. But it's also worth noting, Tu B'Shvat was not a holiday that was practiced, right? Tu B'Shvat was tied to Tu B'Shvat was tied to a time and a place. The time of Tu B'Shvat is tied to when we had the temple, right? When tithes were expected of us, and tied to a place, tied to Eretz Yisrael, right? Tied to the land of Israel. Now, it's not an accident that the Kabbalists settled in Galilee, right? Settled in the land of Israel. They wanted to, actually not just that, but also had a very powerful, I just realized this, very powerful connection with the rabbis of the Mishnah, especially. The Kabbalists in Tzfat would go to, because the rabbis largely lived in the Galilee. They didn't largely live in Judea, right? So they moved into the land of the rabbis, and the Kabbalists would commune with the spirits of these Talmudic and Mishnaic rabbis. They would, go to their graves and stretch out on them, and they would invite their souls into them. A lot of cool stuff if you want to look into it. But they are, part of the task, I think, of the Kabbalists in the 16th century was try to connect with this fruitful period of Jewish history, of the rabbinic period. And one of the ways they're doing that maybe is to revive this archaic, right, cycled out Mishnaic holiday of Tu B'Shvat. So this is a text called Pri-Eitz Hadar, which describes the theory and the practice of the way the Kabbalists observe Tu B'Shvat. The way that people nowadays do a Tu B'Shvat Seder, like we'll be doing in next Sunday evening, is a little bit different, but it's based on the framework, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're getting ready to celebrate Tu B'Shvat together, and we're going to see what it is that nowadays people are able to draw from the resources. So, After I share the source sheet, feel free to look at the text in its fullness. You can find it on Sefaria, or you can find it on opensidor.org, where it was first published. Originally based in an article by Moshe Aaron Krasin, or Miles Krasin, who wrote on this for the book Earth, Trees, and Torah, which is actually a fantastic anthology, really worth searching out. Another great book, by the way, if anyone is interested in doing some reading on your own, that's also great by David Seidenberg, called Kabbalah and Ecology, also a really great book. So it doesn't just come from nowhere. I have I'm helped by those around me as well. Okay, we have I took a lot of selections from the Pri-Eitz Chaim, but again, because I don't want to keep us here all night, we're gonna dip and dodge a little bit. But I'll be a little bit of a tour guide, and then again, you'll have a source sheet to look at in your own time to prepare yourselves for the Seder next Sunday night. So let's look at this first text. It says Va'inyan. Ki kamosha yom Rosh Hashanah la peirot ha'ilan le'inyan ha'masrot dechashviran lahu shana me Tu B'Shvat. Right? This is what we just talked about. The meaning of the day of Tu B'Shvat is just like then, that this was the new year for the fruits of the trees, for the sake of the tithes, right? To do this fiscal holiday, to do an accounting of the tithes. Dehoil v'yardu rov gishmei shana, since most of the rain had already fallen. He's just paraphrasing the Gemara we just saw. V'Allah hasaraf ba'ilanot, and quoting the Rashi that we just saw. And the sap is starting to flow in the trees. V'nimtzu perot chonatim me'ata, and the fruit is starting to take its shape then, like what Lauren had mentioned, but also like what Rashi had said. Kain dugmato lemaila. Now, whoever has been in a Jewish school, what's a dugma? Have you said you have to be a good dugma? Have you heard that? I guess maybe just me. Okay. Dugma means a model, but I want us to take it away from saying you have to set a good model for your friends, for your brother, whatever. But actually, I want us to bring it back into a very technical meaning. The word dugma means not just model, like to set an example for something, set a standard, but it really means like a model, like a 3D printed model. What do I mean? That there is a pattern that is replicated, right? It's like a matrix, like the math. I said this is a no math zone. I'm going back on my word. I'm so sorry. Like a matrix in a mathematical sense, right? It is a pattern that is repeated. So the model, it's like a blueprint, right? And the blueprint becomes the house. That's a model. Okay, where then you make a model, and then the model becomes a house. But that's what we mean. It is a pattern that is replicated. So we say, Kain dugmato lama'ala Rosh Hashanah lepirote ilan ha'elyon. So, just like it is Rosh Hashanah for trees down here, the beginning of their fruitifying season, right? When they start getting, the sap starts flowing and the fruit starts budding and coming into its own. So something correlative is happening above. That the supernal tree, the holy heavenly tree, is also starting to, the sap is starting to flow. The shefa, the life force, the blessing, is starting to flow to its fruits. And what are the fruits of the tree of heaven? Those are the worlds, ha'olamot, asher mehem yishtal shel v'yared polamata. And through the fruits, like dew dripping off of an orchard tree, it flows through the fruits into us, into the worlds below. Beautiful poetic image. And if we were to imagine it, now why, again, saying there's something that they're noticing about Tu B'Shvat because the Kabbalists had a romance with trees. The most common metaphor used to describe, especially in the Tzfat period, to describe the dugma, the pattern of the sfirot, of God's emanations, God's aspects, is what? What's the most popular metaphor they used? The tree, right? The tree is the dugma. It's the model for how they understand, how they understand the pattern of the trees, the pattern of the worlds. So, and if you close your eyes for a second, try to picture it in your head, right? Imagine that there's the ground of the earth, right? There's the roots here to the fruits, right? The trunk grows out of the earth into branches in the crown of the tree. But then flip that, because the roots are in the most original, most source, right? The infinite source of God. And it's branching down into this world. Now, down is a difficult metaphor because it's not spatial. But the tree is branching down. So we have as an earth tree, in a sense, reaching up, and God's tree reaching down, and they meet, right? They kind of mingle with each other. But really, again, this is just a metaphor because down and up is irrelevant when we're talking about God. You can say down and up. You can say in and out. Right, is blossoming into the world. All right, the tree in earth is blossoming out of the world, and the tree of God is blossoming into the world. Okay, so we have a mapping of one to the other, a mirroring, a modeling. Okay, so the Kabbalistic recognition of the tree as the gift that God gave us to give us a way to imagine the way that God's blessing flows means that they're primed for wanting to see the holiday that recognizes the tree as having some kind of way to honor, to dig into, to celebrate that tree relationship, right? That tree model. So skipping ahead in the text, there's like an incantation, which we will actually say together when we do our Tu B'Shvat Seder, Bli Neder. And it's a really beautiful prayer. So actually, to someone from the class, would they want to maybe read this prayer? You want to? Who wants to do a little bit of reading? It's a beautiful prayer. It's worth reading out loud. I don't want to just kind of like reference it.
I can do it if nobody else wants to.
Please.
Okay. May it be your will, Yud-K Vav-K, our God and God of our ancestors, that through the sacred power of our eating fruit, which we are now eating and blessing, while reflecting on the secret of their supernal roots upon which they depend, their supernal sap will be aroused so that Shefa, favor, blessing, and bounty be bestowed upon them. May the angels appointed over them also be filled by the powerful Shefa of their glory. May it return and cause them to go a second time from the beginning of the year and until its end, for bounty and blessing, for good life and peace. That's beautiful.
Isn't that gorgeous? People don't write like that anymore. We need more prayers like this. But if we were to kind of see, it's beautiful poetic phrasing, but if we were to look at its like its major theme, significance, what would you say? I think what we're seeing here is the recognition of some of the themes that we were talking about earlier. So that the sacred power of our eating fruit, that there's something significant and meaningful about what it is, not just to have something, but to enjoy it, right? That's why the second tithe means that we need to be the ones to eat it. And through eating it, that becomes a way in to reflecting on what the tree's significance is, that the roots that trees depend on, and the sap that keeps it alive and that keeps it healthy, and the blessing that is flowing through it, right? A tree is an incredible piece of natural technology of sorts. When I say technology, I mean something with an ability, like techne in Greek means an ability, a capacity, right? A tree is an incredible thing because it is a delivery mechanism for blessing. Right, the tree has sap flowing through it. It's lifeblood, like like a human being, has lifeblood flowing through it, and then what comes out the end of it, what gets squeezed out until it becomes bulbous and beautiful, is what it has to give. All right, so eating the fruit becomes a way, an opportunity to meditate on, not just in the abstract, aren't trees nice, but the way that trees function and what that means for us, the way that it functions for us, because that's the way that we work too. In a way that God works through the world. So again, we see this connection between the three elements that can never be divided: God, earth, and us. And it directs us towards, like any new year, thinking about what it means to reflect on the new year to begin. Kind of like we make commitments for ourselves, with the Rosh Hashanah, or we make New Year's resolutions, for the Gregorian calendar. Similarly, what we have here is an opportunity as the new year of the tree begins to think about what blessing means vis-a-vis our relationship with the trees. All right, so some beautiful sentiments, but now let's get a little bit into the meat of the fruit. This is a little bit technical, and we're going to actually just kind of move a little bit forward. So we'll look at this light right here with bet and 2. So it's minhag tov laholchim betamim laharbot bapeirot be'etzem hayom hazeh. It's a good practice, good custom for those who walk in innocence, i.e., a nice way of referring to his friends, to eat lots of fruit, to have an abundance of fruits, specifically on this day. So he starts. What's new here? What comes through is that Tu Bishvat becomes not just a marker for what is, for the year, right? The accounting of the year's produce of the bumper crop, but rather Tu Bishvat now becomes a day like Rosh Hashanah, a day on which things happen, a day in which we honor and celebrate that which we are brought into connection with. So on Tu Bishvat, what's the main minhag that they would do? If you were just to put it in simple words, what's the halacha for Tu Bishvat? What are you supposed to do?
Eat fruit.
Eat fruit. You have to eat a lot of fruit. There are 30 kinds of fruit that are mentioned in this text. We're not going to look at all of them. But often actually people nowadays say, the 7 fruits of Israel, the 7 species are the most important. Well, first of all, only 4 of those are things that we can actually call like normal fruit. Or like 5 of them, not all of them. You know, some of it's like barley. You're not going to munch away on like wheat berries on 2 weeks, but we're talking about fruits. And 30 fruits are mentioned. And you know, and what's so interesting here is, you know, you have to wonder in terms of, we're thinking about it historically, or as a historian, and materially. Tu Bishvat was only made possible because of trade routes, right? Because of the way in which Kabbalists in Ottoman Palestine in the 16th century had access to a whole host of fruits that weren't necessarily originally native to the land, such that what you know, Tu B'Shvat becomes, I want to say, it's not a globalist holiday, you know, not like George Soros's favorite holiday. No, but it's a global holiday because it really becomes about celebrating all of creation. We start in the land of Israel, and the fruits of the land of Israel have a special significance. That is 100% true. And you know, we root ourselves there, and we branch outward like a tree. We branch outward to the whole world of fruits. 30 fruits that are mentioned in this text: quince, apple, pear, melbum, or something like that I've never heard of before. All kinds of amazing fruits that they are not just saying like, oh, they're nice, but they see it as their religious obligation to sample and to enjoy. And we're going to look at why in a second. Some of my most favorite texts on the spirituality of enjoyment. Yeah, Susie.
Apparently, I'm still having a hard time with the timing of this holiday because the
It's
fruit
the
hasn't
15th
grown.
of Shvat.
No, but I mean, the fruit hasn't grown yet. Like, it's fruit that would have been in storage or something.
I mean,
No?
they have fruit. I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
Okay,
they'd be getting from the market.
Okay, because we live in a time where like there's refrigeration and stuff. Like, it's easy
Yeah.
to store things for a long time, but like, okay.
Yeah, I mean,
That's a hard time with this part.
that's a good point. So, you know, again, I think the material conditions for it have to do, I think, with trade, with you know, which has allowed more, you know, for good or for ill, you know, for lots of things to get around the world, you know, that you wouldn't have access to in other ways. But yeah, I mean, it means you have to source these things out. You have to go get them. And there's a reason, you know, carob is mentioned in this too. But there's a reason also why, I don't know, for many of us who grew up in Ashkenazi homes, because Tu B'Shvat was still celebrated in Ashkenaz, right, in Eastern Europe, by Hasidim, right, because of their like inheriting the mystical tradition. But not a lot's growing in Poland, right, in the middle of winter. So the fruit that is most associated with Tu B'Shvat is what? I just mentioned it. But if you want to tell me in Yiddish, that'll be even more fun. Boxer.
Boxer.
Yeah, boxer.
Breaks
Exactly.
your teeth. It's like eating leather.
Well, get better, boxer. There's great carob. So it's carob, right? Because carob was a fruit that they were able to gain access to in the winter season. But you know, again, 16th century Ottoman Palestine, you know, it's a trade route. There's very successful wool economy happening in the Galilee. So it's very interesting in terms of like the situating it in time and place. But again, the minhag, the practice of Tu B'Shvat, is eat fruit. Why? Because of what it generates inside of us. It's not just recognizing our appreciation of trees. I love trees. But rather it is practicing our love of trees. How? By focusing on how much we enjoy what they produce, delighting in in what they give us. It's an incredible thing. And we're going to look at this now. So he cites this text from the Yerushalmi, the Palestinian/Jerusalem Talmud. And I want to look at it, but instead of just looking at what he cites, let's just look at it directly. It says, you know, let's skip the stuff about how you actually have to live in a city with a doctor. Very interesting, they recognize that. So it says, Rabbi Yossi ben Rabbi Abun says, it is forbidden to dwell in a city which has no vegetable garden. So already in the Talmud, they're like, yeah, you know what's really important? Fresh fruits and veggies. You need to be around, and I think not just in terms of your bodily health, you know, vitamins, but also I think in terms of what it means to be around things that are growing and what it means to be around things that you are responsible for. What it means to be around things that teach you how to cultivate and care for something, right? It's, you know, there's a reason there's been a proliferation of farming programs in the Jewish world, in the therapeutic world, how therapeutic and healing it is to develop a rhythmic relationship with the earth, of what it means to be responsible for something, what it means to cultivate and care for something and bring new life from the ground. These are not just lovely ideas, but to practice these things changes the way you are. Rabbi Cohen says in the name of Rav, every person, an incredible statement, every person will have to justify for themselves everything that their eyes saw, which they did not eat. When? It says, Latid Lavo, in the future to come, i.e., when God calls you to the principal's office after you die, and what do you need to do? Well, in the words of the great Albert Brooks, you need to defend your life. And in defending your life, defending what the how many years you were blessed to have on this earth, one of the things you need to justify is all the things that you saw but didn't enjoy. How do you take? What do you take from that? What kind of ethic is being described?
It's a blessing from Hashem that you should enjoy, because if you don't enjoy, you're denying what Hashem gave us, and you're not appreciating it.
Okay, so there's a gift here. It's like someone giving you a present for your birthday, and you're like, oh yeah, that's nice, right? There's something very, you have a moral obligation that when someone gives you something, to appreciate it. Great. All right, other ideas? What do you take of this teaching, that in the future to come, you will have to defend what you saw and did not enjoy?
Is it also talking about not wasting?
Okay. To, recognizing that everything is here for a purpose and nothing is here extraneously. And also that you shouldn't overeat, overtake, or something. You don't take more, than you can enjoy. So maybe it's saying don't be have an attention to what you can appreciate, not just wanting to take more. Okay, great. Yeah. We have an ethic of conservation there. What else? Something else I think that's here, and something that's very struck by, which I think the Kabbalists are really lasering in on, is it's not just that we have a general moral obligation to God to be grateful, but rather that everything in the world has something to give us. And unless we come into contact with it, unless we unite with it, right? Unless we enjoy it, delight in it, love it, we will never learn from it. There is nothing like experience. The Meshulem Feibish Heller of Zbaraj, say that 5 times fast, it's an early Hasidic Rebbe, said in his text Yesher Divrei Emes, he says that the way to understand what mystical secret meaning is, because you can't ever communicate it, it's something private to you, just like the taste of a delicious fruit. Experience, taste, is radically personal. It is radically singular. It is radically yours. You can, maybe the greatest poet in the world can try to capture a feeling, capture an experience. That's what writing is, fine. But it is a translation of X to Y. To actually taste the fruit, to see what it means to you, is something no one can do for you. The world is a pedagogy. It is here with all kinds of things to learn from, to experience and to enjoy, to see what they do to us and how we respond to them. God gave us an entire world to teach us something, to help us grow as we help help the fruit to grow, to see how it changes us, how it leaves us different than we were when we started, how we are in a different place. We have to go through. There's no way to but through. So Tu Bishvat is when we are focusing on the blessings that the trees, that God through the trees have given us, and to not just be grateful, but to enjoy it, to really enjoy it. It is a subtle but singular and powerful thing. So that's part of the way that the author of the Pri Etz Hadar is trying to describe our task on Tu Bishvat, really through the year, but Tu Bishvat is when we kind of bring our attention back to this. the practice of enjoyment, of what it means to come into contact with that which we would never discover otherwise. Every fruit a revelation. Moving forward, he also cites a different Gemara. There's a midrash that angels are appointed on every kind of plant, and they help it grow. It says the angel that's assigned to that fruit is filled by the blessing, the shefa, the flow, so that a second fruit can replace the first. So they literally angelicizes what's a seemingly natural process of growth. That we lose something every time we harvest, right? We take the first fruit. And the notion that it grows back, is he's saying that's actually divine. That it's not just a pure economy of loss, but that organicism, a growth system, means that, and the angel inside of it, the life force inside of it, is what helps bring new fruit to bear. He keeps on going, he says, thus, it's an incredible comment. We're actually just going to look at it here. We're not going to look at the Gemara. He says, one who enjoys fruit without making a bracha is a thief. Now, he's drawing from a Gemara, and the idea is the Gemara says that actually it uses the word me'ila. The word me'ila means misappropriation of divine funds. Me'ila means using something dedicated to God for your own purpose. Stealing from God. That's how the Gemara says what it means to eat something without making a bracha. We buy it from God, as it were, by being grateful. But to eat without recognizing God's ownership of it, without recognizing the divinity, the divine nature of everything that we consume, is compared to stealing. And not just stealing in general, like criminal stealing, criminal theft, but stealing from God, misappropriating temple funds. So through eating an aspect of creation without blessing it, says the Pri Tzadar, one eliminates the spiritual element that it contains. Everything is not just material, but it's spiritual. Everything is this opportunity to connect with the divinity inside of it. And to just look at food like fuel, to look at it like just some nice little snack or whatever, and not recognize that every time we eat, we have the opportunity and even a responsibility to connect with the chiyus, with the life force that's inside of it. Tu Bishvat is a day to practice what it means to recognize the divinity in creation and to approach it with humility and with gratitude. Okay. Any comments? Is new stuff, but I hope we see that the Kabbalists are paying attention to these twin themes that I was speaking about before, both gratitude, appreciation, and potential, and using Tu Bishvat as a day to catalyze these things, as not just to recognize, but to practice, to put them into practice. It is called a tikkun. A tikkun means repair. They literally saw Tu Bishvat as the day where you could really think about what is your relationship to food, your relationship to eating, and what it means to bring a sense of yourself back to it, a sense of healthiness back to it. I don't mean I don't mean like the way we can reduce this to like, oh, it's a diet holiday, but a sense of health in the sense of what it means to have a healthy and grateful relationship to eating. How much of contemporary food culture makes us guilty to eat? And how much of food that we are forced, or incentivized to eat is food that we don't feel good about. Tu Bishvat is about trying to actually balance the, balance the system by both having emphasizing the food that makes us feel good, to bring us into connection with God's world, and to eat it in a way that we are proud of. Eat it in a way with intention, with gratitude, and with holy enjoyment. Holy, H-O-L-Y. With holy enjoyment, holy pleasure. To take the pleasure that you experience and to look at it and to feel so grateful to have this incredible thing that's, this grape that's exploding in your mouth or whatever it is. Now, I love gushers too, so to be eating this fruit that just unleashes something inside of you, that unfolds its delight. He says, in order to effect this tikkun, l'tikkun hadavar hazeh, ye'uta lanu be'etzem hayom hazeh le'echol kol minei perot. And how do we do that? Well, we distribute our eating, our attention. We try to bring it in all these fruits. We're doing all the fruits, baby. That's Tu B'Shvat. We're finding the sparks of God in every gosh darn piece of fruit we can find. Ulevarech alehen b'kavanah. You know what Tu B'Shvat really is? It's Bracha Fest. It is a day in which Tu B'Shvat is an eating day, and it's a day where we eat in a way, eat as a spiritual practice. To eat food in a way that brings us into connection with the holiness and the divinity inside of it, and to practice what it means to bless the food, to invoke God's name, to practice gratitude, and to touch something that we feel so grateful that we have the opportunity to experience, to have enjoyment framed within that choreography. Ki chaviva mitzvah b'sha'ata, because a mitzvah is beloved in its appropriate time. Tu B'Shvat is the time to do this because it is the new year for the trees. It is the new year for the trees, and thus it is the day in which it is fitting for us to focus ourselves on the tree, to bring your holy attention to the tree, to bring your appreciation of the tree and what it gives us. This stuff we're going to look at when we actually do the Seder, so we don't need to worry about it. But I'll just say on the outside, there are 4 worlds of the Kabbalists, and they go from the most subtle to the most physical, from the most spiritual to the most material. And Tu B'Shvat is a holiday in which we eat fruit that brings us on a journey, a mystical journey through these different aspects of creation by eating fruit that corresponds to the nature of that world. We move from the tough shell that surrounds the fruit of the world of action to the soft outside but the hard pit of the world of formation, to the entirely edible fruit of the world of creation, and finally going beyond fruit and just enjoying the essence of fruit, the smell of spice, the smell of the seeds, and the world of emanation, the purely spiritual world of emanation. Eating the fruit, I think what I really mean when I said spiritual technology, it is something that does something. It's not just something that we do, but it's something that does something to us. And to eat the fruit is a way to, it's a dance of sorts. By eating the fruit, the movements and the actions that we're taking have a certain kind of communicative effect. Eating this kind of fruit brings us in tune with this kind of, tuning into this aspect of reality. Eating this kind of fruit tunes us into this other aspect of reality. The argument of Tu B'Shvat, it's making a claim, the argument of Tu B'Shvat is to enjoy the blessings God has given us in this world, brings us into connection with something particular to that thing, which that thing can teach us, which nothing else can. Eating as a potential practice of revelation. What the experience of eating the fruit, what the experience of enjoyment, what our gratitude at the surprise that fruit gives us when we eat it. The way you can never predict what happens to you because the world is always different than what you can imagine. The radical particularity, the radical uniqueness of every single thing that exists. No apple is like another. No grape is like another. Every single instance is something new. The ever-refreshing newness, as the second fruit replaces the first, is the work of the angels. As one grape in our mouth replaces another, that's the angel. The angel is the fact that the world is ever presenting itself in new ways to us. And the task we have, Tu B'Shvat, and in our lives in general, is to pay attention, make time, enjoy it, and be glad. Consequently, he says, we learn that there is no physical thing here below that does not correspond to something above. For one is protected by another on a higher level, and both of these by still higher ones. Whatever we experience here is a model, a dugma, a pattern replicated above. Whatever's happening to us here is not irrelevant to God, but in some way is happening in God as well, and vice versa. As things are below, so they are above. As we eat the fruit here in Tu B'Shvat Seder, something happens in the world. Something happens within God. by eating the fruit, we can affect something powerful and real. That we can do magic, in a sense. Not like poof, you're a frog, but do magic in the sense of what we perform with intention has some kind of real result. Eating the fruit results in something. It changes us as a person. It changes our relationship with the world, and it changes in some way the way that God mediates those two things. Eating is not a meaningless act, argues the Kabbalists, but Tu Bishvat teaches us that there's the radical potential and the opportunity for gratitude, what we saw from the very earliest seeds of Tu Bishvat, until it's blossoming in the Seder that we know today. For there would be no shadow if there were no one to cast it. The sun hits the tree, as an image in the writer's head, casting a shadow. The sun hits us. Light is only seen by being there. Light is only able to appear on something, on a surface. We are the tree growing, and the tree is us. And I wish us, as we move towards Tu Bishvat, opportunities to stop and to really take the challenge and the promise of Tu Bishvat seriously, what it means to attend to the manifold gifts that God has given us. Yashkoach to everyone. Yashkoach to me for not taking 2 hours. Thank you for all your comments and all your insights. There's so much to see. There's so much to do. Let me just give you, in the chat, you can find the link to the source sheet. So you can download it yourself and you can do some extra learning. A lot of those sources, really, we all benefit from our patience and time with them. And we'll be going through some of them, especially the ones that we weren't able to cover as much next Sunday evening. Tu Bishvat. Tu Bishvat is next Sunday evening. We'll be having our 3rd annual joint Tu Bishvat Seder with Shari Shemayim. We'll be having our 2nd annual, although hopefully last, Zoom Bishvat Seder, because we'll be facilitated via Zoom on Shari Shemayim's Zoom link, which is the link is on the Facebook event and in the flyers and in the emails and the like. I hope to see you there. We'll be having also a special Parsha Chat / Thursday class this Thursday evening, co-facilitated with our very own Renee. Renee, do you want to mention what's going to be special about Thursday's class? So Renee is going to be facilitating.
Frozen in delight.
I think she's yeah, exactly. She's just Renee, are you with us?
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection just got really bad.
No worries. Hello.
Yeah, we're just gonna go through. We're just gonna make Holla together, but there's gonna be a little bit of learning and a meditation during the meeting, and I don't know what else we have, but we'll have it all planned out for Thursday.
Great. This is going to be the first of a continuing series in which Renee will be sharing her insights and will be helping to facilitate us getting ready for Shabbos, but also by recognizing the unique quality of each month. So we'll usually be doing them closer to Rosh Chodesh, but again, Beit Shammai didn't win. Tu Bishvat is the 15th because we follow Beit Hillel. So this month is a little different. We'll be doing it closer to Tu Bishvat. We'll be making special Tu Bishvat Holla. And so I'm excited if you can join us for that. Or you can just, you don't need to make the challah. You can also just have a nice time learning with your friends. We'll be having Kabbalat Shabbat, please God, and Shabbos morning davening. So keep your eyes out for registration for that. Havdalah and Zoom. Then again, Sunday evening, Zoom Bishvat, Tu Bishvat Seder. Excited to see you. Thank you so much for joining us, spending our time learning with us, and I hope to see you soon.
Josh, are you going to send us a list soon about what we need for the Seder?
Oh yeah, we can. Well, I can. So we made a list, and it's going out on the emails.
It came out.
Good.
I
So
didn't see it for the food.
So I'll just say it orally here now, and I'll keep the recording. So if it's beneficial to whoever's watching the video later. So there's 4 different kinds of fruit, right? Fruit that is surrounded by a hard shell or a rind. Fruit that has an edible outside, but a hard, a stone fruit, a pit inside. Fruit that's entirely edible. That's the third world, and then finally basamim, spices. So, fruits of the first kind include, nuts, almonds, walnuts. I mean, I want to encourage people to find the versions in which you have to actually do it. So like, a lot of people, you're not going to crack walnuts, you're not going to crack almonds. So maybe those aren't the right fruits to focus on. I mean, you should have them. But I would say maybe pistachio, the first kind of fruit, because that has, we're all very experienced at taking that out. Oranges.
Okay.
I'm going to say orange
Yes.
count for that, even though not everybody agrees, but I think orange counts because you're taking off the peel. Pomegranates, if you want to take off the peel. So all of those are, whatever fruit has a hard exterior or rind, go wild. And you can put together your own Tu B'Shvat. If you have 30 kinds of fruit, God bless you. But you can also just put it together. There's no, again, it's a minhag. There's not a requirement to have specific fruits, but specific kinds of fruit, because I want us all to have these experiences.
Okay.
Syrah, second world, soft outside, plums, peaches, apricots. Again, try to find the version with an actual pit. I want you to try to avoid hitting the pit. That's part of the point, right? The trepidation, the promise, etc.
So a grape would work, right?
No,
'Cause
you
I
can,
have
you,
a
can eat,
seed.
you can eat the seeds. You can eat the seeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else? What else is a hard inside? Olives, right? That's a fruit from Israel. Olives.
Oh,
With a pit.
yeah.
All right, whatever else has a pit, not seeds, a pit. Because, as my father insists on doing, you can eat an entire apple, right? Something with seeds you can eat. So apple counts as something you can eat all of. What
Okay.
else? Figs, berries. Dates. Sorry, dates have pits. Did I say dates already? Dates have pits. That's a pit fruit. Yeah, figs. You can eat all of. Grapes, berries. Not a banana. Banana does not count. Banana is not technically from a tree, so do not get bananas.
Oh, yeah, that's true. They're kind of a bush.
Well, it's a grass because it hangs too low.
Okay.
What else? Oh yeah, and that's okay, and that's all the fruits, right? So it's really just three, archetypes of fruit: hard outside, hard inside, yummy yummy, eat all of it, right? That's three kinds of fruits. And then for the fourth fruit, you can try to find some kind of fruit essence if you want to really just follow the fruit theme, or you can just use some kind of incense or a spice, something scent. Last element of the Seder is like a Passover Seder, has 4 cups of wine, and it moves us through the 4 seasons. So the first cup of wine is entirely white. The second cup is mostly white with a little bit of red. Second cup is half red, half white, but like not quite half because you don't want to be. And then the last cup is mostly red with just a splash of white in it. So if you just need 2 bottles of wine or grape juice.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention for the Holla make this Thursday night, I put together a Holla making toolkit. It's like a PDF document. It has recipes in it. It has the brachas that you say when making challah. If you did not see it in today's email and you want me to email it to you directly, please let me know. You know what? Maybe I'll put it on our website also, and then people can just access it there too.
Great. Awesome.
Thanks.
All right, folks. Have a great night. Shavua Tov, and I'm excited to see you soon, hopefully Thursday evening on Sunday evening for the Tu B'Shvat Seder. Take care. Great evening.
Thank you. Bye.